Hello and welcome to Morning Call. And if you're from the United States of America, I wish you a happy 4th of July. I'm Fab from Hamburg, bringing you the tech news. Oh, and there's more music playing. We don't want that. Yes, I'm back. Das Morgenruf ist zurück, says 7 of 9. Yes. Thanks, Salifa, for cheering. That I'm back. I also want to thank my remaining 5 subscribers. I know it's been almost a month. I was on holiday, lovely holiday in Tuscany. We went on a trip with the camping bus and it was amazing, very relaxing. And then I wanted to start on Monday, but I had some stuff, just appointments that I had to keep that basically kept piling up until today. So I'm now back and I'm ready to get into the tech news, and I should be there for you every weekday again. From now on, there will be another trip coming up in a few weeks. I'll probably be gone for a week and a bit, but otherwise, I'm here. So let's get stuck into it. First of all, we have a lot of infrastructure collapse. Google had a problem in one of their cloud data centers. Something fiber. Something destroyed some fiber. Probably just some roadworks or just general building stuff. They tend to just destroy cables when they do that, and of course fiber. A lot more suspectable. I can't talk anymore. No, I forgot how to do this. Susceptible to this kind of damage than copper, because it's glass things, right? You just bump it a bit and it immediately breaks. So they had some problems on a network connection to the US East 1 data center. And they're saying something like this is happens seldomly, but if it happens, of course, there's big implications, and they try to reroute the traffic, or did reroute the traffic, but people noticed it. That wasn't the only outage that people noticed. Yesterday, there was a big outage for Facebook-related stuff. So Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram. You might have noticed that Facebook was loading, for example, but there weren't any pictures in the posts, stuff like that. And they had a routine maintenance works apparently. That's a bit weird because they didn't tell anybody beforehand if it would have been routine. I guess they should have known. So Germany, Great Britain, France, and the Benelux states, so the Netherlands and Belgium and stuff, were most affected by this. And but I think also some stuff in the US, although I'm not quite sure. That might have been the Google outage. There was also another outage that I haven't bothered to look up a news story for, but there was stuff with Cloudflare that affected some stuff, and it all went together. I wonder if happiness went up during the outage, says 7 of 9. You mean generally because Facebook is so miserable, or because people finally had time for other things like reading a book or having sex? Maybe the birth rate's going up in 9 months. Whenever there's a football World Cup and Germany wins, there's a perceptible rise in the rate of birth 9 months later. Maybe something like this. I don't, 7 of 9. I don't think so. I think people are, people are generally miserable. It's just like Facebook just enables you to connect to more people. They're just miserable to each other in real life otherwise. On the street, honking in the car at each other, at work, shouting at each other, shouting randomly at each other. People are people. The Telekom in Germany, German Deutsche Telekom, is rolling out 5G, and it's going to be 85 euros a month. They're saying they're expecting a lot more data traffic. Dough. Yeah. So they're starting now. They want to build this out first in Berlin and Bonn. Bonn, at least it says here in this Golem story, Berlin, Bonn, then Darmstadt, Hamburg, Leipzig, and Munich. And in the next 18 months, the 20th biggest cities in Germany should get 5G. This is interesting that Bonn is like the second name because Bonn is tiny. Obviously, it used to be the seat of the government, and Telekom is still there. It's a big telecom. It's like there where their headquarters are and stuff. So, of course, they're first building it out in their own backyard. And then Berlin, because Berlin is important. I find it interesting that Darmstadt is getting it before Hamburg. I mean, I don't know what that is about. Hamburg being the second biggest city in Germany, and of course also where I am located. So it's close to my heart. I love it. 85 euros, says Alifa. Yes, 85. That is 85 euros. Probably the only infrastructure investment they'll see in years, says 7 of you. mean Bonn. Yeah, although Bonn's getting a lot of stuff still, like from the deal. They made this, in case you don't know, when they moved the government from Bonn to Berlin, they made this deal, and there's still stuff going on in Bonn. Bonn has amazing railroad connection, for example, especially to Berlin, because all the members of parliament used to commute there. Speaking of infrastructure investments, this is, of course, all down to the 5G auction that I reported on this show quite a lot. But then I went on holiday, so I missed the story when it ended. So I just dug that up. So that was on the... When was that? On the 15th of June. So the auction concluded, netted the German state 6.6 billion euros, basically. And we now again have 4 mobile providers in Germany, which is new. So it's Telekom, Vodafone, What's the other one? What's the O2 one? They were bought by where is it? The Spanish Telefonica. So it's does that say somewhere in the story? So I don't have to just rack my brain. Come on. So it's Telecom, Telefonica, Vodafone, and the new one is United Internet 1&1, Drillish. They're like daughter companies of each other. Who knows? But they got a block in this auction as well. And now basically also this is the network providers are saying they're kind of a bit miffed about this because they had to pay so much money, and 6.6 billion is a lot of money, and they're basically saying we had to pay this money to the German state now, and that will just put a damper on money we could have used to build out the infrastructure. So that'll go slower. The German state, of course, wants to invest a lot of this money into digital infrastructure, digital, computers for schools, or mostly iPads probably. So they're probably going to mostly invest it in Apple. I don't know. But obviously they're happy about this. As part of this, Telecom has said they're not treating Huawei, the Huawei story again, still going on, differently than any other hardware provider. They're basically saying security is of the utmost importance. I mean, everybody says that, but they're sensible. They're saying all our hardware providers have to basically adhere to the same rules, and Huawei, which is under pressure in the US for allegedly building spy tech into their hardware, which hasn't been proven. Telecom just treats them as any other hardware provider. It's not like the US aren't building spying stuff into their hardware. Meanwhile, Trump has said he's working out a deal with the Chinese. He said the Huawei ban could be lifted. So the Register, I noticed since I went on holiday, moving the Huawei puns from the headline to the subtitle of the story. It's not a to Huawei street just yet, says top brass. So basically the Department of Commerce is saying, even though the White House is saying this ban could be lifted, we still have our orders, and we still, still adhere. You still have to adhere to the current rules, which is Huawei's on that list. And most of that ban doesn't come in till August, so maybe they'll work out a deal before that. What I found hilarious is, of course, this is of course the US saying, the spy tech in this backdoors and stuff in this Huawei technology. But a story now came out that you don't need Huawei to just ruin your intelligence community and build spy stuff into everything. You can just do it yourself. And just like any company, what do you do when you want to basically host all your in-house processes and leave all your employees completely demoralized and unsure of how to proceed and just basically ruin everything? Well, you get a consultancy in, and that's what the the U.S. intelligence apparatus apparently did. So the CIA, the NSA, the DNI, so the Office of the Director of National Security of National Intelligence, got McKinsey in, biggest consultancy firm in the world, I think, and had a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar restructuring of everything, better communications they wanted and stuff like that. Apparently it was a huge success. But now there are insiders basically saying, no, it wasn't a huge success. It was horrible. It hosts all our processes. Now everybody's really demoralized and pissed off, and nothing works. And we paid billions of dollars, and now our intelligence apparatus is more basically worse off, than before, and less effective. Well, that's how it goes. 7 of 9 says McKinsey firing as a service. I also feel like now McKinsey knows everything about the intelligence apparatus, don't they? Like, Are they opening their own like intelligence sub firm? Is that next? I don't know. Speaking of spying, big story. Vice, and I think the NDR in Germany and others broke a story that that in the Chinese border region of Xinjiang, and that reminds me, I actually forgot this. I want to look up where that is, and basically put a map on screen. Xinjiang. So it's where I thought it was. So let's put that up so we can talk about it. Here we go. So border region, basically bordering Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, all the stands. And they apparently have a big campaign going on there because they are... Chinese state is basically worried about Muslim, people with Muslim faith, and there are kind of, human rights organizations are saying they're kind of really mistreating the population there. And as part of this, they have now discovered that they're installing, there's already like a massive campaign of surveillance, as Vice calls it, going on against the local Muslim population. But now, The Guardian, New York Times, NDR, Süddeutsche Zeitung, I think they have this research, investigative research conglomerate thing. They found out that they're installing Android malware on tourist phones at the border crossing. So what they are doing is they're basically, if you read this, it's already horrible. If you want to cross that border, you are basically forced to go like through this clean room environment where they search all your stuff, and that takes about half a day apparently, which is already bad enough. But then they also take your mobile phone, and apparently they're installing malware. And I was like reading this whole story and like reading how are they actually doing this, and it turns out they're doing it on Android because they're just side loading malware basically. And then it just searches the phone. They give it permissions to search everything like local files and text messages, and pretty much searches the phone for hashed data. And it seems to be pretty much anything with, with the word jihad or the Quran or anything Muslim in there. Apparently, it searches for, among other things, was this. For for stuff with the Dalai Lama, something, but also for a music file from the Japanese metal band Unholy Grave, which has a song Taiwan, Another China. And apparently they leave it on your phone. It puts like an icon on the screen, or they did in some cases, which is why people discovered it. If you're at a border crossing and you're handing over your phone, that's pretty much game over, isn't it? It'd probably be a bit harder for them to install it on an iPhone, but with Android, obviously, it's just way too easy. Now, antivirus companies have actually added this malware to their list, so it should actually, if you use any of these software, it should actually warn you of that. But I think the takeaway is just don't hand over your phone in that on any border crossing. It would be the same going into the US or something. I know it's hard, but if I went over a border like that, I would probably not take my phone. It's tough. You basically need a throwaway phone that you wiped beforehand. In other news, the Register is reporting that a Microsoft kernel developer is saying that ReactOS. So ReactOS is an operating system that claims to be like written from scratch, and claims to it's what it does is it doesn't emulate. It's just basically a okay, they're saying they're an alternative implementation of the Windows kernel. So it runs Windows apps with a kernel that is just written to do the same thing as the Windows kernel, but not actually based on the Windows kernel code. So it actually does the same thing as Wine, basically, just as a, just with the kernel. So it's not emulated. It's actually a native OS that just basically, if a Windows app runs, it attempts to answer all the kernel calls just like Windows would, so that the app doesn't notice that it's actually running on Windows. And there is Axel Richin, kernel engineer at Microsoft, has now claimed that ReactOS is, quote, a rip-off of the Windows research kernel that Microsoft licensed to universities. He apparently said this in 2017, but now has written a post on Hacker News, which has got more, just more attention. He says, I think it's a ripoff of the Windows research kernel that Microsoft licensed to universities under an agreement that was obviously violated by some, as the code has been uploaded to numerous places, some of it on GitHub. That is actually, the Register reported on this earlier, last year, I think. I glanced at ReactOS code tree, and in my opinion, there's absolutely no way on earth this was written from a clean sheet, only from the available public documentation. Internal data structures and internal functions not reported anywhere and not part of the public symbols have the exact same names as they appear in the research kernel. Reactor is saying it's a clean room implementation, which it just sounds credible. But then on the other hand, Microsoft, you're claiming to be a friend of open source now, so maybe just let it go. But there's the Register also points to the developer of ReactOS, Alex Ionescu, talking about how he's actually doing stuff. And that's kind of interesting. I mean, the whole thing is just complicated with kernels like this. I mean, there was the Android debate with between Oracle and Google, and also the Linux stuff. Basically, what's an API? What does the kernel export? What can you reuse, and all this kind of stuff is very technical. I think ReactOS is such a small project that Microsoft going after it for this kind of stuff would actually be more detrimental to them than just ignoring it and not telling more people about it. I'm not blaming that, by the way, don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming that Windows kernel developer. I think it's actually cool that he's talking about that. I think it's interesting, and I think it's a valuable opinion. Some local and some what the fuck news now. I don't know if I talked about Moya on the show before. It's like this ride sharing company that was founded by it's a daughter, like it's part of Volkswagen VW, and they are basically operating these buses that are just ride sharing. It's a bit like it's not really like Uber because they have their own drivers, they employ their own drivers, and they have their own cars. And they started in Hamburg, pretty bigly. So they trialed this in Hanover when I was still working for Heise, but then they got like different buses and rolled it out. They have like these electric Volkswagen Crafter, rebuilt Crafter buses now, and they rolled this out with a huge offensive here in Hamburg. But there was a ruling by a local court that said they first allowed them to operate the service, and then they ruled that they only can use 200 cars, because we have this very complicated taxi laws in Germany. Basically, it's a state monopoly, and taxis have certain rules they need to fill. Like for example, they have to accept you as a passenger. no matter how long you want to ride and stuff like that. And so there was this ruling, and Moya was against this ruling. They said we need more cars, and now this ruling has been reversed with a judge in Hamburg here basically saying, well, the taxis they have kind of a license in the public interest to provide transport in the public interest, and that means taxi operators can't now go to court and say, so if the lawmaker basically says yes, Moya can operate, the state says that, then the taxi drivers which are operating in the state's and the public interest can't say, well, you can't do this. Local court 9, state court doch says 7 of 9. Well, basically this is it's both local courts, right? Because we're talking about federal state here, and Hamburg is a special situation. Some federal states in Germany are cities, just like Hamburg. So Hamburg has the local court, basically the city, and then the federal state court, which is also in Hamburg and is also only governing Hamburg. It's not like 7 of 9 from Baden-Württemberg, where the local court would be like, the city court, and then you have the federal state court, and the federal states are much bigger, so it's a lot different situation. But still, what I find hilarious about this is that I don't understand why Moya needs more cars, because I've been interested in the story very much, and I ride around Hamburg quite a lot, in my free time and on work, and I made it a point to spot Moya cars, and they're everywhere now. And just look in. I mean, they have tinted windows, so it's kind of hard. But I can, if you're paying attention, you can see how many passengers they have. And they've been operating for 3 months now, I think. And I've seen possibly thousands of Moya rides. And I've only seen one where there was more than one passenger in it. I think they can get up to 6 passengers in those buses. And they're obviously saying, they were talking to NDR, is doing a lot of local news, are doing a lot of stories about them, a lot of positive stories also about these rulings and stuff. And they're basically saying, they're parroting basically Moya propaganda and basically saying, oh yeah, 65% of our rides have more than 2 passengers. I've so far only seen one Moya bus with 2 passengers. I haven't seen one with more than 2 passengers. Those were actually getting off in my street. And I see quite a lot. I mean, I live very close to the airport, so there's lots of taxis here. If I call a taxi here, like I have to call them from outside my house, because if I call them from inside, they'll be there. It'll take me longer to get out of my flat than for them to get here. And obviously there's a lot of empty taxis running from the airport, but there's also a lot of very full taxis going from and to the airport. And Moya are obviously circulating here a lot, because they're also, predictably also going to the airport. And they're all empty. I think it's very different when you're in the inner city area. Although I haven't seen any Moya there with more than 2 passengers. But I'm also not in town partying Friday night. You have to keep that in mind. I think then they're probably all full. Friday, Saturday night, going in and out of town, pretty much. But once I get out here where I live, they're all empty. They're all empty. So I'm completely not buying that 65% more than 2 passengers. Completely not buying it. I think they're bullshitting. I think they're doing some statistical whatever. Massaging the numbers. So I find it hilarious that they want more buses. They must be operating at a huge loss. They must be subsidizing this service quite heavily. So interesting. In other what the fuck news, Microsoft on their social accounts has featured advertisements for Windows 1.0 for some reason, and people don't know why. Speculations, the Register reporting, ranging from Microsoft Flight Simulator. I remember that. I think I never played Flight Simulator 1, but I think I started with 3 or 2. I don't know. But yeah. the Reddit is speculating that this is there might be open sourcing Windows 1.0, or also that's a tie-in with Stranger Things, because that's set in '85, and that's when Windows 1.0 debuted, and there's a new Stranger Things series coming up, I think, new season, and it looks like they are. It might either be that or the open sourcing or something. Strange. Very strange. So we don't know what that is about yet. I'll let you know when I figure it out. Anyway, that's it for today. I just want to give you one more thing. A few weeks ago, actually before my holiday, I watched the movie Apollo 11 to write about it. And that has now been published because it's now coming to cinemas in Germany. If you're outside Germany, it might have been already been in the cinemas. It's also a very limited release. This is a documentary film, but anybody who is interested in space and space exploration, and if you are watching this channel, chances are you might be, or if you're listening to the podcast, of course, I would say watch Apollo 11. I think it's the best movie I've seen in the cinema in several years. And I'm including all movies. I'm not talking documentary movies. I don't often watch documentaries in the cinema. But I also often, when I do like a movie review, I have no desire. I mean, even if I really like the movie, I don't have a desire to watch it again. With this movie, I'm making an exception. I'm pretty sure I will watch this again. If you get to see it anywhere in a cinema close where you are, please do yourself a favor and watch it. It is really good. So basically what it is edited documentary footage of Apollo 11. It looks like, documentary footage they shot for the original mission. It does not have any commentary. It is completely like the voiceover is just like Capcom and Mission Control and the astronauts talking themselves. It is just amazing, and the images are so bombastic that it's really worth watching it on a in a cinema, I think. It just made me feel like it made me laugh, and it actually made me. It is actually a drama, and this is really hard to do because obviously everybody learned in school what happens. You know that they don't die, but it's like you actually feel afraid for them, and the images are just. I mean, if you're watching this trailer a little bit, you can already see it. It's just completely amazing, and it's just like from a time that we can't. I have to check if it's on IMAX as ASCII. I actually don't know. But yeah, it's just a time. It's just stuff that you can't imagine. I watched that and I thought, I mean, it's obviously the 50th anniversary of the moon landing this year, and I was like, you watch this and you're like, what happened? Like, why aren't we doing this anymore? Like, shouldn't we be on the Mars right now? I mean, it's something that Buzz Aldrin says all the time. And then I just felt nostalgic for the style because you see the people there, Brill Cream, and you see like glasses, 60s glasses, and women with amazing hair and Cadillacs and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh man, I wish I lived in that time. It's so much more fun than today. And today if you think of that mission, it was such a literally a moonshot. It was such a daring thing, like with the technical abilities they had back in the day, and saying we're going to do this, we're going to fly there, and we might die, but it's all these things they didn't know about radiation and stuff, and didn't really know how it would affect the astronauts, and just the guts of still doing it, right? I mean, God, can you imagine that today? The rocket like this, everybody would be going like, oh my God, the carbon footprint of that, what the fuck? It's great. Watch it if you get a chance. Watch it. I can only recommend it. Yeah, I think it's if you're interested in space, it's a must watch. Anyway, that's it for me today. For Independence Day. I will see you again tomorrow for another show. Until then, stay free and keep keep the world free. And I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye. I don't know what button to push. I forgot how this works.